Hi, how are you? Thank you for clicking on my channel. I'm Dami. Today I'm going to be talking about another book, and I'm going to try to sell you on this book. However, I feel like I'm biased in today's book because this book took me quite some time to get through. By quite some time, I mean it took me a month, if not more. And I'm not the fastest reader, but a month, and it's not the biggest book either. A month was, I wasn't busy, I wasn't doing anything so important, so life changing. So I just really got less interested every time I picked the book up, but I had it on good word that the ending was worth it, and I will say the ending was worth it. Two things that held me back was I wasn't really familiar with the author, who is Sylvia Moreno Garcia, and I wasn't really familiar with the genre. It's a gothic novel. Now, ideally, of course, this can't or should not hold you back from reading a new book or trying a new genre or whatever, but I think because I started, it wasn't intriguing me, didn't really keep me hooked as much. I'm like, okay, maybe it's the genre, maybe it's the author, I don't know. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you some things or a thing, a couple of things that threw me off, what held me back from finishing this book on time. Then I'm going to give you a brief synopsis, and if you could get through those the first two parts of the video, then the third part I'm going to tell you what I really, really loved about this book. And if you pick it up, you're doing yourself a great service. So first and foremost, what held me back the most was I believe that if you are, whatever genre a book is, right, setting up characters, authors, world building doesn't take as much. I personally just think that it shouldn't take as much like time as it should. So this book, it took only two chapters, and that's great. Like from the first two chapters, you know what's going on, you know the stakes, you know like everything you need to know about all the characters. Everything is fine, right? You're probably asking, what's the problem? For the first couple of chapters, I felt like I was watching a movie from the 90s, and I felt like I was just watching someone do a daily routine over and over. Like they would wake up, have coffee, walk their dog, pick up the paper, come back, make breakfast, go to work, do the whole thing again. Nothing new was really happening. However, on getting to the middle of this book, for me personally, with each chapter, there were some new stakes. And I think it's a very interesting but dangerous thing for me personally, because I'm not someone who, because of my ego, I don't really know how to DNF a book unless it's so bad. I was so close to with this book, but after I got to the middle, with each chapter, there's something that happens that's like, I want to see what happens with that in the next chapter. And then I get to the next chapter, it gets resolved, and something else happens. So I think that was a very, very brilliant way to keep, readers interested and to keep readers like invested in the book. Some people might, I know some people who dropped this book along the way. Some people are not so invested, they don't really care because they think it's just like, prolonging the inevitable. But for me, I'm like, okay, that's pretty smart. You're onto something. Let's see what happens. So the world building, I think, was the main thing that really held me back, because everything was, defined in the first two chapters. And then moving on, it's like, okay, everything's set. Why are we prolonging? Like, what's going on? I think maybe that's the only thing that actually did stop me. And for a while, the dialogue, secondly, was one of the boring things for me. Now, you might read this book and come back to the video and be like, what was he talking about? The dialogue is perfect. That's great for you. But I think I just wasn't really interested in the conversation, because sometimes when I'm reading a book, I like to pretend like I'm eavesdropping, right? And when you eavesdrop or gossip about something and it's not even interesting, that's what I felt like. There's some dialogues in this book where I'm like, I'm not interested. I don't care about what you're talking about. It's not interesting to me. It's quite boring. It's not really helping the story. But I will say, I was quite wrong towards the end, because there was some conversation I did not pay much attention to, because I felt like they were not necessary. They were quite and then towards the ending, they were important. So take that with a grain of salt. Now, with all that being said, those are the only two things that threw me off. Like, getting to the synopsis, it's actually a beautiful book in a way. So there is a family that moves from France to Mexico, and they own a mine, right? And they live in, so the kind of house they live in, imagine like House of Anubis. Not a castle, but like a high palace type of thing. Or like the house where, so imagine like where Beast lived in Beauty and the Beast almost. So almost like a castle, I guess, whatever. Anyway, they owned a mine and they had a lot of workers, as you'd imagine, and something happened, like some kind of outbreak that happens in most mines in the past, and these miners ended up dying. They got sick and they died. Now, this family did not do their due diligence. Due diligence. They did not send the bodies back to the families. What they did was they built a mass burial ground, a cemetery, and they buried all the bodies there. And with every set of workers that would come, whichever died, they would just bury their bodies there, which was very weird. And the families of these people never really knew what happened. Now, we have a woman, Catalina, who marries into said family, and Catalina has sent a letter to her uncle in Mexico. Also, this book is set in the 1950s, FYI, so that's really good for context. Now, Catalina has sent a letter to her uncle telling her what's going on and how she feels and what she's been observing and seeing in this house. She's been married there, I think, for like 2 years now or so. And her uncle, based on his recollection, the letter is quite vague and it's very morbid in a way. She says she's seeing some things, but it sounds like she's just exaggerating. So he has a daughter, Nomi. Nomi is 22 years old. She's like a debutante woman. She's changed her major a couple times. She has a rich dad. She's brilliant, but not really sure what she wants to do with education. So they strike a deal. It's like, you go see your cousin for like a week, 2 weeks, and then you can just, study whatever you want. Because he's like the kind of father, like most fathers, who's like, study medicine or whatever. She wants to do like, I think it's like interior designing or something. She changes like, along the way. Anyway, they make a deal. She goes see her cousin, right? And she gets to this house, this high palace, and on getting there, she thinks it's very cool. It's very like aesthetically pleasing and everything. She gets there, she sets up, and there are some rules that kind of throw her off. So Nomi's a smoker, and they tell her she can't smoke in the house, she can't smoke outside the house. She has to go into town. And then on getting into town, that's where the second rule comes in. She can't drive on her own. So she has to have someone from the house drive her. She has to ask for permission like days in advance or like the night before, like it's a meeting or something. She has to ask for permission to either be driven. She can't really drive on her own. The one that actually weirded me out. So they have dinner, right, every night, and they don't talk at the dinner table. That kind of freaked me out. Yeah, they don't talk at dinner. They just, it's silent. And her first dinner there, she thought, I'm the guest, we should talk. They're like, no, we don't do that. But they kind of bend the rule a little bit. What else? I'm trying to think of what else. Like some of the other rules that were kind of weird to me about this. But yeah, that's really what happens. That's all you need to know. Nomi is going to see her cousin Catalina at her, the in-laws' place to see what the letter was all about. Now, Nomi starts to see some things, and Catalina's letter starts to make a lot more sense because she's saying things that don't really make sense, and she's not sure if she's hallucinating. She's not sure if like the change in the atmosphere. So I'm going to give you two examples. They're not really spoilers, but it's going to get you more invested and maybe convince you to pick this book up. Two things. So one day, Nomi comes out the shower and she sees someone that's headless on her doorstep. Headless, but like their face, or what's supposed to be their face, is like a glowing light bulb. And this person is just standing there and they run away. Second one, which is a lot more creepier. Nomi's having a dream about being in a bathtub, and she sees Catalina's husband, which is basically her cousin-in-law, if that's a thing. And trigger warning, he touches her in some inappropriate ways, and she's kind of freaked out, but she wakes up and she's like, okay, it was a dream. So maybe, how that dream went, it doesn't really matter. But the weirdest thing happens, he references the dream in real life. So imagine you have a dream about talking to your brother or your sister about like candy. And then in real life, your brother is like, oh yeah, so about the candy. You're freaked out, right? That's what happens. He references the dream in real life at like dinner or something, and she's like, wait, what? So that's what the book is about, right? She has to be there to see what's going on with her cousin. And middle of the book, she's trying to get her cousin out, but it gets a bit complicated. There's some kind of like forbidden love there where she's almost like liking someone who is in this family as well, but she sees that maybe that's not the best idea. And yeah, that's basically the synopsis. If I go any further, I feel like I will spoil and give away the best potential of this book. That's what the book is about. So everything that I've explained, right, has been set up for you in almost like the first couple chapters. So you know everything, and then it just keeps prolonging. That's kind of what threw me off, and that's kind of what like shook me a little bit, and that's why I wasn't really able to gel with the book as much. Because on another occasion, there's some books where it's just like no, just vibes, no necessary plot. I understand that, but this, you can tell there's like a necessary evil. There's something that's supposed to happen. There are stakes, but I kept wondering why do we keep what's going on? But then at the same time as well, though, across the book, she goes on a couple of journeys into the city, and she's finding out about this family. She's getting more information about who her cousin actually married into, and she's like, okay, this is a lot creepier than I thought. They even like ridicule Nomi in some ways, where it's like, you're just a rich girl, you don't really know much about hustling, you don't know much, you don't know much about like being outside in the mine and in life or something. They try to ridicule her, but she doesn't really take that as a big thing. She kind of dismisses it, which was pretty good. And yeah, I'm gonna stop talking about the book now. I will say, even with all the bullshit I've said about how this book kind of held me back and was boring in a way, if I was to reread this book, I'm not going to. If I was to reread this book knowing everything I know, I will say that maybe the build-up was kind of just setting you for the pace of how everything was going to, like, you know, be worth it in the climax. I don't know if that makes any sense, but like, the book is set up. It takes a very, very slow pace, in my personal opinion. It takes a very, very slow pace, just like show you a day-to-day, the family, teaching about different family members, because like with each chapter she's learning something new, and then in turn you're learning about said family, what's going on in the house, what's going on with the cousin, and then there's a big climax at the end that kind of makes everything that you've learned worth it, you know, worth it towards the ending and from the middle and from the beginning. So I'm rambling now, but you get the gist. Now, I wanted to do a favor and read the meaning of the Gothic novel because I wish I knew what this meant, you know, going into the book. And for anyone who's interested, there is a glossary at the end of the book after acknowledgement. So if you want to read that before the book, I feel like that might be a lot more helpful. I wish I did that before I read the book. What is a Gothic novel? A romantic fiction with a prevailing atmosphere of suspense or terror. Romantic means it derives from the romantic artistic movement, not that it is a love story. Its emphasis on melodrama and big feelings is what marks the Gothic. Nothing is small or muted. Gothic novels encompass a wide spectrum of works and have recurring tropes that make them identifiable to readers. Dark castles, virginal heroines, Byronic men, etc. I hope with the definition of giving and with everything I've tried to, you know, brief you on, if you do decide to go into this book, you at least know what you're getting into and you know what to anticipate and what to relax and just enjoy the ride with. I will say, if you're reading this book, maybe reading something else along the way would not be a bad idea, because I know people who read 2-3 books at the same time. I can't do that. That's why I got a bit bored, because I don't like dividing my attention. Maybe I will indulge now, but I was reading this and I'm like, okay, I will pick it up today. I will pick it up, read a chapter or two. I'm like, ugh, I'm going to bed. It was what it was. It's a good book, however. I don't knock it, but I just think for me personally, it was a bit slow. For others, it might just go perfectly. I know some people who really, really love and enjoyed this book. So to each their own, obviously. Don't take my word as law, which I hope you're not doing. Anyway, with all that rambling and all that explaining, thank you so much for clicking on today's video. I hope I've been able to sell you on why you should probably pick up this book and, you know, indulge in it and enjoy and get into a new genre if you haven't, because this was a new step for me to a different genre. As much as I enjoy thrillers and suspense, this was something very, very different and creepy for me. There are a lot of creepy moments that I think, looking back now, I really, really enjoy how they were articulated and put in this book. But while reading it, it scared the shit out of me. So do yourself a favor, pick this book up if you think I've been able to give you enough reasons to, and if not, that's fair. I will see you next time I'm talking about another book. Thank you so much for clicking. Subscribe if you feel like I've done a good job. Comment, share, like this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.